Okay, welcome everyone to today's Saros Educate webinar, Designing for Clarity with Less Text and More Interactions. In this session, we'll examine ways to turn dense, text-heavy static content into engaging, interactive experiences in Studio by utilizing elements like pop-ups, carousels, and more. My name is Travis, and I am the digital content educator on the Saros Educate team, but the real star of the show today is Alex, Educate's very own multimedia designer. And before I pass the mic over to her, I want to note to our wonderful live audience that if any of you have questions throughout today's webinar, please drop those in the chat or Q&A windows, and we'll spend some time answering your questions at the end of the presentation. So without any further ado, take it away, Alex.
Thanks, Travis. All right, let me share my screen. Can you guys see this? Perfect. Okay, so hi guys. Thanks for joining our webinar. I'm Alex. Like Travis said, I'm the multimedia designer on our Educate team. A little bit about me. I've been with Saros for 2-ish years. I think it'll be 3 in January, so like a little over 2.5. I have my BFA in film and post-production. Here's a picture of me and my friends at our graduation, except this was actually Hannah's graduation. Mine was the day before. I don't have a picture of me in my cap. It is what it is. And then I have my MA in motion media design, and this is a picture of me and my parents at my graduation. So if it moves, I can probably make it. I am living in Austin right now, and I have a dog named Oscar. This is Oscar. I thought he was like 5 or 6. I took him to the vet. He's like 7, almost 8. So he's like almost a senior citizen, which is crazy. So that's all about me. Today, our agenda is pretty simple. We're going to go over the main reasons why less text matters. Then we'll move on to attention spans and how they relate to using less text. Then we'll go to how to design for clarity and some interactive design techniques. Then we'll do a little demonstration in Studio of how to take text and make it more interactive. And finally, we will go over the creative challenge for this month. So to start off, why less is more when it comes to using text? When talking about why we should be using less text, there's really 3 main focuses as to why text is deterring audiences from engaging as much as they should or would given the right attention grabber. The first reason for this is cognitive load, which really means how much our brains understand, absorb, and then react to the information. We'll dive a bit deeper into this on the next slide, but cognitive load is based off of cognitive load theory, which basically says too much information is going to keep people from remembering it. So the ways that we learn impact our processing and absorption of material. So it's a bit more complex than that, but again, we'll dive into that in the next slide. The second reason is because of behavior and attention. Attention spans are such an important factor when it comes to keeping people engaged in content. Knowing how behavior and attention is changing can help us determine what we should be presenting for audiences to retain what they are seeing or reading. And then the last reason is the rise of mobile first use and multitasking. So many people do the majority of things on their phone. Social media is all primarily mobile first. You can do it on a computer, but I think most people are getting on, you know, Instagram, TikTok on their phones. And phones are just always with us too. So having that be such a distracting point, knowing how to make our content engaging enough to distract from the mobile first atmosphere is really important. And that includes limiting the amount of text that we have in our content. Phones are very small, and having big walls of text on a very small device is not going to keep people engaged. It's just going to take away from them. They're going to look to something else. So to further understand today's attention spans and why less text is important for engagement, we have to dive into the cognitive load and the theory around that. So cognitive load is the effort being used in working memory. It's based on the theory called cognitive load theory, also known as CLT. It was developed in the late 1980s by John Sweller. It came out of a problem, like a study about problem solving. The theory is a bit complex and it's also very long, so we're only going to talk about the ways that learning is divided into cognitive loads. The first part of the theory talks about the different types of memory. So, as a brief summary to that, essentially, a person can only remember 5 to 9 chunks of information at a time, and they're more likely to remember information that builds off of things that they already know, and if the content is easy to digest. So, simple, easy to remember. This is why teachers often focus on breaking down information into bite-sized chunks rather than just like throwing a textbook at you and being like, good luck. It's also why people tend to try to make connections between what they're learning and what they already know, is it makes it easier to attach that content to something that like already exists in your memory. So if any of you are visual learners, how I sort of pictured this was like a filing cabinet. It's a lot easier if you are receiving files to put them in a file cabinet that's properly labeled than to have to go and start that whole organization process. I'm not sure if that's accurate to this, but that's how I pictured it, so that might be helpful. So moving on to how we learn and why it's important when talking about text. So cognitive load theory says that cognitive load has 3 different types. The first type is intrinsic, which is going to be the level of difficulty of the information that's being presented. So, studying astrophysics versus studying addition and subtraction, or college level reading versus second grade level reading. It's the level of difficulty on a general scale for the information that somebody is receiving. So, this cognitive load typically remains consistent across people, assuming that they all have the same level of education. So everybody here would have a lower intrinsic load when trying to read Hungry Hungry Caterpillar, for example. The next type is extraneous load, which this is the one that really varies across people. So this is the one that you really want to focus on. Extraneous load is how difficult it is for the person to absorb the information. So this depends on a variety of factors like the teaching method, the processing time of the student, and the overall absorption of the material. So it's the main determining factor for how people process information, but it's also so different across a variety of people. One of these things is like learning disabilities. People with learning disabilities are going to have higher extraneous loads than people without them because they have to use more of their brain to process the same like nuances that other people don't have to work so hard to process. So, for example, I have learning disabilities. So, when I was in school, I had extended time because it took me longer to understand what the questions were asking of me than it did for other kids. So, this sort of like helps even the playing field for me and other students with disabilities to be able to show their understanding of the material without being hindered by that processing time. Another example would be I'm learning a 3D software in my free time, or I'm trying to. It's very hard, but it's a lot easier for me because I already have those connections from other art softwares like in my head. It's a lot easier for me than it would be for like my dad, who has never touched an art software in his life. So that previous existing knowledge is going to be helpful for the strain that it takes for that information, if that makes sense. And then the last type is germane. So germane load is going to be how much of a person's mental effort is going into processing the information. So how I understood this was if they're actively trying to learn and remember the information. If someone's getting bored while reading or researching or listening, they're not going to remember as much as somebody who is actively participating. So if you don't care about the information, you're unlikely to memorize it. So knowing about the brain is cool and all, but why did I just talk about that for 5 minutes? How does this help us when designing for clarity? Cognitive load is studied and used a lot in teaching methods, so obviously it's important and they're doing something right. Using this theory to think about the way that you present information is more than just simplifying your information or using fun transitions. It's about keeping in mind that the cognitive load of your audiences needs to be kept at a good level. Too much information means too much work, and people won't retain whatever content you're putting out. So, too much text can lead your users to feeling overwhelmed and feeling like they're doing more work than they need to be. It's important to create content that doesn't feel mentally taxing. For example, if I had written out everything that I just said on this page, that would be very distracting and very overwhelming, and people naturally want to read ahead. So I'm sure you all would get to the end of what I was saying, but I'm over here saying it. And then when you try to tune back into what somebody's saying when you've already read ahead, it becomes messy and it becomes overwhelming and people just tune out. So too much text can be mentally straining and a distraction, which can be really detrimental if you're trying to appeal to a wide audience. The content needs to remain simple, easy, and fun to interact with. Instead of overwhelming your audiences with text, focus on the important points, bullet points, and main sections where the bulk of your content can live. So, having pop ups or carousels or slides or hover states, all of those are great options that can reveal the content rather than just having it all at once. And lastly, optimize learning by optimizing connections. So work on things that your user has already retained, things that can reduce the cognitive load by applying knowledge to categories that are already existing within people's memories. This can be done by broadly categorizing your points or relating them to specific categories that you've already talked about. So now that we've talked about memory for a whole long time, let's talk about how ours as a whole has decreased with attention spans. So I'm sure most of you guys know, but attention spans have been on the decline lately. The rise of short form content, as well as the prevalence of social media in people's everyday lives, has made like undivided attention more of like a rare commodity. There's so much digital overload around us at all times that having someone's undivided attention for more than a few seconds is honestly a big ask of anybody. So, how do we combat decreasing attention spans? And what are the main issues that a decrease in attention spans presents? I'll start off strongly by stating the obvious that interactive content can be an overarching solution to a decrease in users' attention. But interactive content is also sort of an umbrella solution. It's not applicable in every situation, especially if you're working with static content. So, how do we keep attention spans in mind while creating static and interactive content? An issue that we run into when using a lot of text is an information overload. Users are so bombarded constantly with information through text, ads, notifications, multitasking, the amount of screens that's around them. I have my phones here, my other computers here, my monitors here is very distracting. So, presenting walls of text to your users, they're going to skim the information, they're not going to actually read it. I'm sure this has happened to everybody, but like I will read the news on my phone sometimes and I'll get to the end of an article and I'll go, what did I just read? Like I took in all the words, but they didn't stick because I wasn't fully paying attention to what I was doing. So this can also happen because of a lack of visual hierarchy. Uh, when there isn't a clear header or point or subheader, bullet points, if there aren't enough visual cues to signal to the user what they should start reading first and what they need to focus on, they're going to get confused, they're going to skim, they're going to move on. Something needs to stand out for the user to know what is important. This also indicates an issue with unclear or lengthy text. Walls of text usually indicate that there is a main takeaway for the user to focus on, but without a marker or a visual key for the audience to see that structure, users are going to tend to skip past the important parts of the text and instead are going to focus on the minute details that aren't necessarily as relevant. People really need distinguishing markers as to this is the main point, this is the second main point, this is the overarching take that you should have from this. Users also tend to disregard anything that doesn't immediately grab their attention. We're looking for like immediate value. And when I say immediate value, I don't mean it's like adding to your quality of life or like benefiting you financially. I mean, it makes your brain go, ooh, I want to keep doing whatever this is. And I have a great example for this, especially if you're trying to market to Gen Z. The recent car ads or Brita commercials on Instagram. I sent one to my team last night. I don't think anybody watched it, but it's a great example of grabbing people's attention. If any of you guys have seen the Brita Instagram recently, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I recommend that you go look at it after this. It's so bizarre, but it's weird enough to grab the Gen Z attention the first thing that I did when it popped up on my screen, I immediately went to the Brita account and started scrolling. And I would say that's like immediate value. You're getting a payout from that. The audience is attracted enough to what you're putting out that they want to see more of it. And lastly, attention spans decrease when there is passive content. So interactive content engages the brain a lot more than static content does. Static content just doesn't grab people the way that it used to. And we also have so many ways to add interactions and animations and different creative elements to your content that if your content doesn't need to be static and you're allowing it to be static, you're going to make your audience lose interest. Now that we've gone over the issues with attention spans and why it's important to keep our content engaging and interactive, let's talk about how we can design for clarity. So there are more than just 4 main points for this, but I thought that these 4 were pretty important. And these can help with interactive and static content. I wanted to include something that's applicable for both. So the first thing to keep in mind when trying to design for clarity and engagement is to prioritize clarity. A lot of the times people can get lost when trying to make their content sound clever or funny. So they create like a lot of metaphors or puns and try to make themselves sound more elevated than they really are. But that actually does like a disservice to the overall message that you're trying to convey, especially when you're trying to convey it to a younger audience. You want to be relatable. You want to seem like somebody on your team is in that demographic of people. You want to seem like you're the same. So if you're going to go with branding yourself as like a serious brand, prioritize clarity. Don't try to be like witty and in between the funny and serious, if that makes sense. So focus on being precise and like to the point if you really are trying to establish clarity. Following clarity, we talked about this before, but visual hierarchies can really help keep your content interesting to your audience. Viewers don't know where to look when all the text is the same size, the same color, same font. You have to distinguish between them in some way. So this isn't the best example, but as you can see here, when you click on the accordion, the one that's the main focus changes the font. That's a very minute way of showing visual hierarchy. And visual hierarchy also leads us to the next point, which is chunks for scanning. As we covered earlier, people tend to scan content instead of actually reading it. So making sure that your content is divided into sections, like into chunks, uh, will really help because since people tend to scan things rather than actually reading it, if you break up a large paragraph into 4 different chunks, people are going to scan each of those chunks. So they're going to get 4 main points rather than just the one that they would get from the big paragraph. This will also help make sure that your users don't get bored or like miss any of the important information as long as you can break up the information into different chunks. So, and the last design for clarity rule I have is consistency and patterns. By reusing certain elements, the way things are arranged or distributed, keeping those things consistent will ensure that your viewers feel a sense of stability and cohesion between your content. Our brains also try to recognize patterns, so doing this also helps keep the brain engaged while receiving the information. This is also an example of that, having these different like drop downs, you know what's coming. And it's just a way for our brain to keep engaged in recognizing the patterns across different visual elements. So before I dive into the live portion of this, I wanted to give 3 tips for interactive design. The clarity rules can apply to static content too, so I wanted to ensure that there are some interactive design tips that you guys can take away from this. So the first one is to reveal versus explain. If you notice, I have little pop-ups to reveal the details of all of these. Content that can be explained should be revealed. It shouldn't just be out in the open when you can add interactivity to it. The reveal should be something that's engaging and interesting to watch. So you should show the information instead of just telling it. Next is putting visuals first. This can be the way that you organize your content. It can be the way that you structure your content into like different containers or text blocks. It could also just be like regular visuals like illustrations, icons, diagrams, motion, graphs. Content that is visually appealing, though, will be more memorable to your audience and therefore it will be more engaging. And then the last one I have is to disclose progressively. This sort of ties into the first tip, but we don't want to reveal the content before it's time. So I could have had all of these pop-ups like explained at the bottom, but then this tips contents would have been disclosed too early. So you want to make sure that your content and interactions are in line with the proper timing that you have in mind. So before I move on to the live portion, do we have any questions? I'm going to stop my share real quick and drink some water while I read the questions. Okay, sorry. Reading Colin's question right now. Colin, that is a great question. I would recommend building out the desktop experience first in Saros. It's easier to have a sorry, Dallin 70 distracted me. It's easier to have a desktop layout that you can then convert into a mobile experience than to try to start from a mobile experience. Mobile experiences are very hard to work with. Also having that is just it's a little bit more difficult to get everything laid out properly, especially since you have to remove like hover states. So I would recommend using a desktop version first and then going through and tweaking the mobile version. And there are okay, Dallin's cat typed 70. Cool. Tell your cat I say hi. Are there any tips for converting desktop to mobile designs faster? We do have a few mobile articles, articles about mobile experiences and how to speed up that process. We also have a few interactive guides. I will ask Travis if he can find those and link them out to you, Colin, because that is a great question. Jeffrey, high functioning autism, I don't know, but I would believe so because I do believe that autism would qualify as like a learning disability. I think it's anything that's beyond the standard uh like what's it called? Not neurodivergent. Yeah, anything that's neurodivergent I think is considered like a disability. Though I don't think that's the correct word for it, but it's a different way of learning essentially. So I'm not sure, but I think so. All right. Okay, I'm gonna get into the live portion now. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. So this is the PDF that I imported. As you guys can see, it's a bit of a mess. So I wanted to show you guys what I did to take this, ignore the plant name, to take this essentially, and I transformed it into this. It's not the best, but I thought it was good enough to show for the demonstration. I took this main like text description here and I put it, as a hover state with the title and then the scientific facts. I had the pictures move so that it like reveals them. And then you can hover over the characteristics. So personally, if I see a hover state, I'm gonna go, oh, I should click on that. And then you click on it, and then it'll tell you the characteristics, and then you go and you reset it. So pretty simple. It uses a lot of hover states, so it takes a little bit, but it's like not too hard to make, and I think it's just way more interesting than this. It's just personally, I don't know anything about plants. So I was trying to take something that I didn't have like a personal interest in and tried to make it something that I would find personally interesting. So hopefully that did its job. And now I will show you guys how to do that and the process behind it. So for just the sake of time, I have gone and organized this a little bit. So in the original one, sorry, the zoom annotate button is right over where the layers button is. Um, so for this original one, as you can see, it's not organized the best, which that's not a fault of this person, and it's also not a fault of Studio. It's just how PDFs are. You usually don't group things in PDFs. So going back to this one, for studio's sake, I tried to like group everything together to make it easier. I also changed the image sizes here so that they are all the same size. They're all 108 by 108. In the original one, they vary a little bit, which for having that sliding transition, you want them all to be the same size. So I'm going to move this. Sorry, I've got my keyboard over here. I've got my 18 different screens which are making things difficult. Okay, so for this, I'm going to move this off screen. And then I'm going to take the knotting onion, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it over here. And you really only needed to make, if you're trying to make this, you only need to make one of them, and then you just copy it, which I also thought was very helpful when I was making it. So I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to take these two images and I'm going to do the Alt G or Command G. I think if you're on I don't know which one is Mac and which one is Windows. I'm so sorry. I'm using the keyboard that has both of them. So I just use whatever one it says there. So I'm going to retitle this Images N-O for Knotting Onion. And then this one is the one that I'm going to make move. So I'm going to put it on top. And then I'm going to rename it and I'm going to go moving. I am keyboarding on hard mode. It's the neurodivergent. It's making things more difficult for me. That's a joke. Okay, so now that I have my two images, I'm going to hold down the shift key and I'm just going to increase them like that. That way they're a bit bigger, a bit easier to see. Beautiful. And I'm going to move them over here. I'm also going to move this out of that group. Okay, now I need to make a box that's the same size as this. So I am going to take the square tool. I'm going to hold shift so that it makes a box. And this is now 209. So I'm just going to type in 209. 209. Perfect. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go like this. And then to make sure that these are all aligned properly, I'm going to put this above these two. I'm going to do oh, what did I do? Hello? Oh my God. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna do shift and click on the moving one. I should click on this one too. And I'm gonna align them all to the bottom so that it looks like that. And then I will do, I believe I did a 5 corner radius. No, I did 10. 10 corner radius. I'm gonna change this to white. And then I'm going to add a stroke. I think I did a black stroke and I believe I did it 2 thickness. Cool. And now I'm going to do the text. So I'm going to put the text right here and I'm going to do knotting onion and my text is in white. Great. Okay, I'm going to change that to black. And we're going to make this 35. Cool. Cool. I'm going to center this by holding the Alt Command key and the square, and then I'm just going to do this and this, so that will center it. And now I haven't added any hover states to this, so I am going to group these two together. I'm going to title this title, and then I'm going to duplicate this because I know that I have another version of this where I don't want the hover states on it. So I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to do characteristics knotting onion. Hold on. Characteristics description knotting onion. And then I'm going to turn that off. And you will see why I'm doing that in just a second. So now that I have the title done, I'm going to have a hover state. So I'm going to add a state. I'm going to add a little transition, just the default transition's fine. And I will do hover, add another transition. I'm just going to change this to white. Perfect. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the square, but I will make it black. I'm not going to do anything with the stroke. We'll just leave that. Cool. I have to think, what did I do next? I need to move these over, is what I need to do. Boop. Cool. And now the scientific name. So I'm going to copy this and paste it again. And then for this top one, I'm just going to get rid of this top portion. That way I have both of them in like separate groups, if that makes sense. And then for this bottom one, I will delete the bottom part. So now I have the scientific name. So I'm going to move this one under the moving image. I'm going to change the font. And that is so tiny. Say 25. Nope, that's too big. Okay, we're going back to 20. Okay, and now I'm going to move this like right here. Let me make sure that that is centered enough. Cool. So that's going to be like right here. So now to do that like reveal, I need to make essentially a big square to block out that text. And I'm sure there is an easier way to do this, but this is how I did it. So I'm showing you all the flaws in the process. Okay. So we want to make sure that that's the same size and the height needs to be 209 because I know that's what the square is. Cool. All right. And we want this to be on top of the scientific name. And I'm going to leave that gray, that way I can see what I'm doing for right now, but I will change that after. So I'm going to add a default transition to this. And then I'm going to do a click state, just because I don't want it to do that over the hover. I do want it to be after a certain click. So I will change that click state. And I'm just going to move this so that it's the same size as the box. Cool. And then I'm going to take the moving image, I'm going to add a state, and I will also make this a click state. And I'm just going to move this. I'm going to hold the shift key, that way it moves perfectly on the x-axis. And I'm just going to move that right to make sure it's aligned with that. And then I'm going to change the corner radius, that way the corners don't stick out. Cool. And now I have to group everything together. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to move that out of the way. Okay. So let's add our first hover state. Cool. Now I'm going to name this title hover state. And I'm going to put that right above the title. And then I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to go Command G. And I'm going to say NO for Nodding Onion base layer. Pretty sure I called it something different in the actual thing, but that's fine. Okay, so for the title hotspot, I'm going to go to the interaction and I'm going to say on this hover, I want it to change the target state of the title. I can just click on the title as a whole because they both have the hover state to them. I'm going to save the interaction. And then I also want it to change the target state of that image and the square. And I'm going to move those both to click so that they'll slide over. And I want to lock that state. That way, once they slide over, That's it. Oh, but I don't want that hover. I want that click. Yes. Okay. So then I'm going to go back to this. Nope, not that one. And I'm actually going to remove this from the interaction panel. So I've added the states to it and you can see it still moves over. But in the interact panel, now if I were to click on the image itself won't move over. So it has to be clicked. This hotspot has to be clicked for it to move over. So I hope that makes sense. The reason that I'm doing this, I can show you. I don't want it to do, so I want it to move over when I click on this. And I'm going to refresh this because you need to see the point. So I don't want to be able to click on this and have that move over. I want it all to be moving together. So I'm removing that from the interaction, but it doesn't remove it from the actual object state. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to get rid of that. That way. Uh-oh. Zoom, please move. Okay, we'll just do it again, I guess. So now I can click on these two and it's not going to move. But if I click here, then it'll move. And now that looks really tiny, but we are going to continue moving on. And I saw a question. Did I? Did not say a question. I'm lying to you. Okay. Hold on, I'm having a brain moment. Okay, I know what I'm doing now. So I've made that interaction. Now in the original one, I had a little flower that moves. So wow, that looks so tiny. Okay, so I did this all on my monitor. My monitor's a lot bigger, so I'm just now realizing that the text is a little small. My apologies. Okay, so to get to the not asset library, stock media, sorry. I'm gonna do the option 4. And that brings up this. I'm gonna go to icons. I'm gonna go flower. And then I want to pick a pretty one. I think I did this one, but I think I want to do this one. So I'm gonna click and drag that. And then I'm gonna hold the shift key. I don't actually think I need to hold the shift key. I don't, but I did it anyways. So I'm gonna put that right here. And I'm gonna put that in the title too, because I want it to be a part of that group. So I'm gonna add the states, default, transition, normal one. The hover state, we want it to move it over here. I'm going to move the rotation 180. And hopefully that looks good. And now I'm going to add a little text. And I'm going to say, click for more. I don't know why my text is on white by default. I'm going to change it to black just so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to center that like that. Then I'm going to put it under the flower icon. And I'm going to change it back to white. So now I need to move it over more, but you see how it I don't need to add a hover state for the click for more because it blends into the background. Just make things easier on yourself. All right, move it over a little, see if that fixed it. That looks so bad. Okay, hold on. Let's move this over more. And now we move that back over. Does that look better? It's a lot of trial and error. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, cool. So now we have this whole title group. And because I had the interaction change to on hover, it should change the whole title group. I believe it should. Yeah, perfect. I didn't need to update that. It was fine, but okay. Now that I have these interactions applied, I'm actually going to copy this. So I'm just going to do Command C, Command V. I'm going to rename this to Carebrick title NO, because this is now going to say, oh, I'm clicking on the hotspots. Okay. Nodding onion. I'm going to do characteristics. obviously move this down a little bit because that's giant. And I'm going to center this. I'm deleting the flower. No, I'm not, apparently. Okay, cool. So this hover state is going to be giant. So where did I put this at? Default 28. Okay, so I'm going to go to the hover state and change this back to 28. I'm actually going to change it to black real quick so I can make sure that it's... Well, that's not black. Okay, sure, why not? Then I'm going to make sure these are centered like I did last time. Okay, and now we're going to duplicate this hotspot again. We're going to title this Carrick title hotspot. And then we are going to go to the interaction. Oh, okay, it's pausing me. Also, yes, Sharon, all accounts have access to stock media and icons. I use them all the time. And the keyboard command shortcut for that is the option 4. So good to know. I use it all the time. Okay. Now that it's refreshed on me. All right. Characteristics title. On hover, we want it to not change the title, but we want it to change this. Yeah. I'm just going to update that. I didn't need to update it, but it is what it is. Okay, this is a problem that I ran into. I just had these layered on top of each other, but once I started adding more hotspots and interactions, it started to get a bit messy since everything was just layered on top of each other. So I'm actually going to go back and do that as soon as I click on the title hotspot, it's going to hide the title and hide the title hotspot. So what that's going to do is it's just going to make it easier so there's no like underlaying. So if I hide something else that I have layered on top of it, that's not going to show up, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do on the click, I want to show the character title hotspot, and I also want to show the character title. But then I want to hide the title and the title hotspot. Perfect. Okay, and then this is going to be our characteristics. This is why I didn't, this is why I duplicated the one in the beginning that didn't have the hotspots added to it. Just makes it easier. So now I'm going to copy this part. I'm gonna go here, paste, and then change that font and make it not giant. Okay. Then I'm going to center this. Perfect. Okay, so I want to make, I'm going to add this under here. That way all of my categories, my like content groups are together and my hotspots are together. So for the characteristic title hotspot, I want to make sure that when I click on the characteristic title hotspot, it's going to show the description. Cool. And then I also, what do I need to do next? The reset button. Okay. So I'm going to do option 4. What did I do for this? Stamp? Banner? Yeah. Okay. Now I just have to find a good one. Sorry, I thought my mouse died on me for a second. That would have been embarrassing. Okay, no pretty banners? What's that about? Sure, I'll do this one. I'm going to put that over the image because that's, we want to reset the image and this big square. So we want to reset all of that so that it goes back to the beginning. So this is probably the hardest part of this whole thing, is to make sure that all the interactions are like properly applied. So I'm gonna make this black. No, I'm not. Okay. And now I'm going to add a state. I'm gonna add a hover state to it. And then I already have this purple color that I picked. So I'll do that. And then I'm going to do T for text tool. I'm going to do reset. And this is the one case where having that text in white is helpful. So I'm going to do my best to center it on this. Oh, yeah. Then I'm going to add states to this too. And I'm going to make this black. And I'm going to group these together by doing the Command G. And I'm going to title this reset. And for this, I know that the slide back for this gray bar would end up cutting off that reset portion. Like it's going to look weird if I don't add a delay to the reset. So I'm going to hide this. And then I'm going to go to interact. I'm going to do add an interaction. Geez. Then I'm going to go view, change target state. Wait a second. No, I'm not. I changed my mind. I'm so sorry. I'm going to go to animate. I'm going to do fade in. I'm going to do fade this way. And I'm going to do point. I'm going to do the duration is 0.3. The delay is 0.5. Sure. Why not? Okay. Now, we have one more hotspot to add. And then I think we've got it. Okay. So it's not over here, actually. It's going to be over here. I'm going to title it reset. Reset hotspot. Okay. I'm going to move this all the way up here. Interact, interaction. Let's add that way I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so on the interaction, when we hover on it, we want it to change the target state of the reset. Yeah. Okay, and then we want the click to change the target state of that initial image, so the moving image, because we want everything to reset back to the way that it was. So we're going to change that back to the default. Save interaction. Now I have to remember what else to do. Okay. On click, we're also going to show, because we hid this initial title layer, so we're going to show that title layer, and then we're going to show that title hotspot as well. And then on the click, we're also going to hide. We're going to hide the reset hotspot. Okay. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to go back to the characteristic title. Okay, so on the characteristic title hotspot, none of these, it's this one. So on the hover, we have it change that hotspot. And then on the click, we want it to show this, but we also want it to show this. We also want it to hide this. Okay. So click, hide, title. Yes. Okay. And then we also want it to show the reset hotspot and the reset group. Show reset and reset. Update. Okay. I'm nervous. Okay. I probably messed something up, so we might have to go back and fix things, but sometimes that's how things go. Okay. No. Okay. I forgot the square. That's what I forgot. Okay. So on the characteristics title, that's the whole reason I did that whole animation thing. Okay, silly me. So on the characteristics title, we want the big square to go back. That way we can have that reset banner thing on top of the square. So on click, we're also going to change the target state of this square. Okay. Now let's try it again. Except this didn't change back. Ooh, okay. Once I click that, oh, silly me, I didn't hide that. Okay. Okay, and now I have to change this square because otherwise that looks bad. So let's change this to white. I'm gonna go and make sure that the click, I guess it doesn't matter if the click is white or not. Okay. Oh, except now it's not working again. What am I doing? Oh, I have to show the hotspot too. Okay, so as you can see, I did show the hotspot. What did I do wrong there? All right, I'm confusing myself. Characteristics, okay. That goes back. But the hover state's not there. What happened? Oh, I think I have. Do I have another hover state on top of it? Title hotspot. God. Oh, I don't think I ever hid that hotspot. Okay. Okay. So that was a doozy. That, yikes. I made that way more complicated than it needed to be. But as you can see, it's not too hard. It takes a little bit of trial and error. And now that I've wasted so much time going over that, now we're going to talk about the creative challenge real quick. So let's get out of here. Okay, so this is our creative challenge. The outline for the creative challenge this month is to import the tale of the rabbit and the moon, which is attached below in this PDF. It looks like this. So you got a lot of text, you got some graphics to work with. You don't have to work with the graphics if you don't want to. So you will put it into your studio account, transform it into an engaging, impactful, and interactive experience. And as you create your experience, keep in mind what we discussed today during the webinar about clarity, visual design, and appealing to an audience that scans text rather than thoroughly reading it. And you have complete freedom to design your experience however you want, but it must include the following: a hero section with a hero section or page, sorry, with a title and background visual, a visual engaging section or page for the overview content, and then a section or page that transforms the PDF's story copy into immersive and interactive content. So you can use interactions, anything that you see fit, as well as any type of layout. It can be all on a single page or broken up into multiple pages. You can also choose to remove or add additional content, text, images, graphics, to increase the user experience. So it is due on September 4th, and then we will have our next creative challenge webinar where we will go over your submissions and hand out this cute little rabbit and moon badge. So Yeah, thanks for coming to the webinar. I will pass it back to Travis for anything he has to add. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. That was such an insightful webinar. I have no doubt that our viewers will be walking away with ideas and strategies for how to adapt their static content in studio. Do we have any questions from our audience members? Anything that we went over today? If not, we can wrap there.
Jeff asked what the challenge is. So,
Hmm.
Jeffrey, I'm going to send this link to you. I'll put it in the chat. That way everybody can read over it. But there's the link for the creative challenge if anybody needs it. So yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like we'll call it there. But once again, thank you, Alex, for hosting today's webinar, and to all of you attendees for checking it out. To stay in the know about and register for our upcoming webinars and events, check out the webinars and events tab on educate.saros.com. All of us here on Saros Educate sincerely appreciate your continued viewership, and we hope to see you again soon. And yes, answering Rich's question real quick, yes, the recording will be available on Educate, and everyone that registered will get an email follow-up with the recording sent to them as well. Cool. Well, thanks again, everybody. Have a